السلام على سبع الهدى. السلام عليكم. Please be upon those who follow guidance. MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, Sheikh.
How are you, Eric?
I'm good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, ala kulli hal. Alhamdulillah, I praise Allah in all situations, man, but especially a situation in which I'm doing well. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فمن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ثم أما بعد. We are still going over the names of Allah. And today we want to introduce a name of God that is, all of the names of Allah are very special, but the name Al-Salam, the peace, refers to the fact that God is the source of peace and He is the giver of peace. As-Salam. And one Muslim scholar, the Andalusian scholar Ibn Hazm, he said, if you wanted to find one thing that united all people, in spite of their differences in creed, their differences in country of origin, their differences in culture, their differences in, disposition, history, character, etc., it would be that all people desire to be free of stress and anxiety. They desire to be free of, they want peace. Even if they don't know this is what they want. Everything that, Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya in Madarij al-Salikin, he said, and this is a very important thing to remember about dunya. Whenever you're thinking about some item, some object, some experience, some achievement, Imam Ghazali also mentioned, it's never about the thing in and of itself. It's never about what this item or what this achievement or what this experience can offer you on its own. It's all about the satisfaction that you aspire to derive from that thing. It's never about the means. It's always about the end. How you know it isn't about the means is because two people can experience exactly the same thing, and it means something completely different to each of them. This person, and it's always the case, and this is, I think, something that God has done as a mercy, that the person who is not in possession of a thing believes that it has much more ability to give him peace than the person that actually has it. The person that actually has it knows, I have this thing that you want, and I still don't have peace of mind. I'm still not satisfied in my soul. My soul is still irascible. My soul is still agitated. There is still a void that has yet to be fulfilled. But the person that lacks that thing, they don't know that. They're very easily obsessed with, if only I had this job, if only I had this amount of money, if only I were married and I had children, if only I knew this. And then you talk to somebody that has achieved that or has that, and they explain what? No, I'm not still. That's the nature of the human being. The nature of the human being is that we quickly become dissatisfied with anything that is not God. It might satisfy you temporarily, but after a while, that void, that yearning, is still there, which is one of the reasons that in our consumerist economy, they have to keep people going from thing to thing very quickly, right? Because you quickly grow bored of okay, I got 90 another one. iPhone 14, 15, more pixelation in the camera, bigger, new yellow, the new colors, because we quickly grow bored with, okay, I have this one now, what's next? And both Imam Ghazali and Imam Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, they said, if you follow that yearning from one thing to another thing, the only place that you will find that it is extinguished is in the worship of God. Allah bi dhikrillahi tatma'innal qulub. Is it not other than with the remembrance of God that hearts find rest? That human, Ibn Hazm also said that hala, the word in Arabic is hala. Arabic is, mashallah, beautiful language. Some words actually sound like what they mean. Hala is one of the, hala in Arabic is anxiety. Hala. Ibn Hazm said, the fundamental trait of human beings is anxiety. Why? Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Sanya? He said, why is the fundamental trait of human beings anxiety? Because we are creatures that are subject to change. We're always changing. There is no permanence in the life of a human being, right? Just the reality of age in and of itself, right? We are beings that are uniquely aware of our mortality. And even though, I keep picking the silver hairs in my beard out, we can see ourselves aging. Right? In one verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the reminder. One interpretation is that the reminder of death is gray hair. That when you look, one brother, he said, when it turns white like that, it don't turn back black. I don't care what Just for Men said, it don't turn back black. We experience all of this, and it's a reminder. It's a reminder of just how everything in our world is in flux. So naturally, we feel anxiety. Even if you take the ultimate anxiety away, like the anxiety about dying, even like with our health, for instance. My wife is always telling me, we gotta have solid healthcare. Solid healthcare for what? I've been to a doctor in 20 years, right? But she said something, and I said, "Dang, why you gotta say that?" She said, "Well, even if you feel like you're in good health now, the body has to break down some way. You have to die of something, right? The body has to break down in some way." I said, "Damn, you're right." you have to find it, because I think, death is the degeneration of all the cells of the body. I was joking with somebody that, I used to think when I was a kid, I'm never gonna die because I'm gonna have a pacemaker installed in my heart to keep my heart beating forever. Not realizing that it is not merely the cessation of the heartbeat that leads to death, but all the cells of the body begin to degenerate. Everything. That is what age is. It's the cells of the body degenerating. This is something we are conscious of. This is something that is inevitable. How, as people, can we not feel anxious? That means anything you have, you only have it temporarily, and you know that. Any money that you have, you won't have it forever. The dunya, they say either it will leave you going broke. The famous American writer, I love this quote, man. Ernest Hemingway. He ended up going bankrupt toward the end of his life. They said, "Man, you Ernest Hemingway, one of the most popular writers of your generation, how did you go broke? He said, how? At first slowly, but then suddenly. How? At first slowly, but then suddenly. You know, this is how I went broke. But the dunya, either it leaves you going broke, or you leave it dying. So there's no in between. There's no in between. These are things we know. Any pleasure that we have is not permanent. It's short-lived. It's just, many of our scholars say, the only reason God has created this is so that we know there is no everlasting peace to be sought in the dunya. You can't find it there. You won't find what you're looking for in cocaine. You won't find what you're looking for in heroin. You won't find what you're looking for in sex. You won't find what you're looking for in relationships with people. It can't be found there. The peace that you want, this freedom from anxiety, you will only find it in Allah. You will only find it there. It can't be found anywhere else. No matter what the world is telling you, it cannot be found anywhere else. And, peace also means that Allah is free of defect. You know, the Arabic root, sin, lam, mim, salam. Salam comes from that root. It means to be free of blemish, to be free of defect. We can literally translate that as God is flawless. Salam, right? What we want is we want to experience that peace. If you see someone who does not love peace, who does not want peace, then you're viewing, or you're observing someone that has been hurt and potentially damaged in a very serious way. There's a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. Fighting has been prescribed for you. وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. But you don't like it. Right? فَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. But maybe you dislike something and there is good in it. وَعَسَى أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ. And maybe you love something, but there's bad in it. There's something negative in it. Man, my favorite interpretation of this ayah is that Allah is addressing the natural, healthy state of the human being. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. Fighting has been prescribed for you, but you don't like it. This is what is natural for someone not to like to fight. And then Allah encourages them, but maybe there is good in this, right? Muslims are not people that sacralize violence. That is one of the biggest misnomers. Even the idea of holy war, there's nothing holy about war. War is a necessity at times. The Prophet ﷺ said, never be desirous of meeting your enemy on the battlefield. Meaning, if there's some other way, pray that God gives us access to resolving the issue that other way. But if you meet them on the battlefield, be steadfast. Be courageous. Do not flee. Do not turn your back. But never be desirous of meeting your enemy on the battlefield. Because we should be people who want peace. Because God is peace. One of God's names is peace. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing the Muslims and he's talking about their adversaries and he says, but if they incline toward peace, right? This is after all of the verses that non-Muslim critics of Islam always, وَقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم, slay them wherever you find them. You know, after all of those ayat, where Allah is preparing the believers for battle, he says, but if they incline toward peace, meaning if they want to make a treaty with you, make the treaty. Make the treaty. Meaning if they come to a table and they want to resolve this issue without bloodshed, we would meet them there. I also want to resolve this issue without bloodshed. But if they insist upon battle, then be steadfast. In fact, be fierce in battle. Now, I'll tell you something else about peace in the Islamic legal tradition. There was a situation after Badr where there was a group of captives that were, assembled, round up. And they were trying to decide what to do with the captives. Some people thought they should be executed. Some people thought they should be ransomed. Right? And some people said executed, some people said ransomed. Right? Ultimately, they ended up ransoming the captives, accepting money and sending them back. It was later revealed that ransom is not always the best choice, because ransom, yes, it fills your pockets with money, but it prolongs the conflict, right? The enemy has they've kind of reconstituted their ranks, so now they keep fighting. It's like, okay, we got some money from that, but it's going to be more violence because we captured 100 people, we just sent them back, and now they're probably going to be fighting even harder. Man, they captured me. I don't know how really. Right? God says, don't aim for the acquisition of dunya. Aim for the establishment of peace. Right? Fight in a way, and this is for some people kind of weird. So he's saying they fight in a way that leads to the establishment of peace, because this is what we are about. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, عباد الرحمن يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا السلام. The servants of the merciful that walk with humility upon the land. They walk with humility, right? وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ. And when ignorant people address them harshly, قَالُوا السَّلَامَ. They say peace, peace, peace. I'm not about that. I want peace. You know, one thing that most people know about Muslims, even people who don't know anything about Islam, is that we greet each other by saying As-salamu alaykum. Everybody knows that. That's almost like they say that believe it or not, the most well-known thing about Islam is what? What do you think? The most well-known thing about Islam in the world.
Oh, wow.
Hijab. The most well-known thing about Islam in the world is hijab. Is that when people see the headscarf, they know those people are Muslim. That's the most it's researched. The most well-known thing about Islam in the world is hijab. I think the second most well-known thing is probably like the adhan or something like that, or that we don't eat pork, or right, or something like that. But up there somewhere is that the fact that we greet each other by saying As-salamu alaykum. Everybody, at least in America, everybody, As-salamu alaykum, shake salam, shake salam, brother. Shake salam, queen. This people know this, but sometimes I wonder if they know that we're actually saying peace. This was a greeting that the Prophet initiated. This was not something the Arabs used to say. That was the new thing. They didn't say, I forget what their greeting was. I used to know it. It was like an Arabic word. They used to say like Abshir, something. I forget, it was something like that. They had their own greeting. And that's why one of my favorite hadith was an old man. He was like old Sheikh al-Haram, like his 80s. And he came to the Prophet Muhammad. And the Prophet said, Salam alaikum. And the old man said, what? You know what I'm saying? He said, Muhammad, all of this is so new to me. All of it, like, there's even a new way to greet people. Because, you know, we always said Abshir, or there was some Arabic term they used to say, like, this is what we say. And the Prophet ﷺ said, and Allah has given us a better greeting. This is the greeting of the people of paradise. Salam alaikum. And the man was like, man, I never thought I'd live to see the day where I didn't know how to greet people. But tell me about Islam. And he started talking to him about Islam. And the old man accepted Islam. Mashallah. I think in the hadith he died very shortly after that meeting with the Prophet. But the Mawdi' al-Shahid, or the point of reflection in the hadith, is that the Prophet was a cultural iconoclast. He was somebody that everything about him was fascinating to people. Even his greeting was unique. This person is different. You know, there was a man named Tufayl, or Ibn Tufayl. He was a poet. He's a poet, but he was from, I think, the Eastern Arabian kind of province in the Arabian Peninsula. And he had come to make Hajj during the Meccan phase of the Prophet's seerah. And when he got to Mecca, people came to him and said, yo, be careful. There's a man running around named Muhammad, and he has a speech that's like magic, that if you hear it, you're bewitched. That's what he said. That's what he told you. If you hear it, he got you. And Ibn Tufayl said that. He was like, really? And he said part of him was intrigued because he himself was a poet. So he was like, they say he's better than me, or what? Like, you know, he trying to understand. What, you know? They said, look, just trust us. Go and do your, because, you know, of course, the Quraysh and the Meccans, the Arabs, they would make Hajj even before Islam, right? So they said, just go make your Hajj, do your manasik, but put something in your ears, stuff your ears, just so that you can't hear. It's that dangerous. Like, put something in your ears, stuff your ears up. Because if you hear this, man, he's got you. Ibn Tufayl said that he came into the Haram and it was chaotic. Haram was always chaotic, just like now. It was chaotic. People make it tawaf, but they used to make tawaf clapping, and they used to make it naked. That's how the pagans, they used to make tawaf naked and clapping, right? They felt like their clothes were too impure for the sanctuary. True, look it up. Right? Look it up. They used to make tawaf, they used to make it naked and clapping their hands real loud. And Tufayl said that he came in, and I always think, was he naked too? But that's that part of the story is unclear. You know what I mean? but he said that he looked around and he saw a man standing near the Kaaba, standing up and moving his mouth. And he said everything about this man just radiated peace. That's what he saw. He said he saw him. He said he'd never seen him before. And he said that every time he went around the Kaaba, he got closer. So imagine the person that he sees is standing near the Kaaba is there. He started going around on the outer edge, and then every time he would do a circuit, he would get closer. He said, on my last circuit, I was right up standing next to him. And he said that he pulled me almost like a magnet. Like I couldn't, it was irresistible. And he said that when I approached him, I was standing very close to him. They said at that he was unperturbed. He didn't like, what are you doing? He said he just kept whatever he was reading, or whatever he was reciting, he just kept doing it. And then Tufail said, man, I'm a poet. I'm gonna take this cotton out of my ears. He took it out. And he said, of course, he was reciting the Quran. It was the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He said he listened to the Quran, a few verses, and he said, this is not the speech of a human being. Embraced Islam at the hands of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and probably went and put some clothes. No, embraced Islam at the hands of the Prophet alayhi sallam. This is not the speech of a human being. But he said that he saw a man whose presence radiated peace. He's at peace. You know, when I think about da'wah, you know, we can stand on corners, we can preach, we can give pamphlets, we can go to Speaker's Corner in London, Hyde Park, and argue with people that walk by. Not knocking those brothers that do that. May Allah bless them. You know, make their efforts successful. But you know what I think is, especially in our society, the greatest form of da'wah that we can give is just being people that reflect and radiate peace. People that we're at peace. Doesn't mean that we don't get angry. Doesn't mean that we're always happy. But I'm at peace with the fact that al-amr kulluhu fi yadillah. I'm at peace with the fact that I may not know what's going to happen tomorrow. And naturally, that would produce some anxiety. But God knows what's going to happen tomorrow. I know that God knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Therefore, I'm at peace. My anxiety is lessened. You know, there's much talk now, mashallah. The first person I heard talk about it was Imam Fode Rahman, the great Senegambian scholar who is now based in Vancouver. But he said that the spiritual illnesses of our time are grief and anxiety. Grief, unresolved issues with things that have already taken place. As grief. Something happened to me. I was abused as a child. Somebody assaulted me. Someone molested me. My marriage ended in divorce. Something happened to me, and I'm still working through it. All of that would be considered grief. Something happened to me, and I haven't come to terms with it. Sometimes these are macro historical issues. Transatlantic slave trade. You know, I talked to some people in the process of trying to give them da'wah. And the biggest, hindrance, the biggest barrier for them accepting God is they just can't understand why God would allow slavery to happen. How can a God allow something like that? This is grief. Grief over something that took place in the past. I can't. They're not at peace with Al-Salam. And the other thing he mentioned, anxiety. A person that is concerned about something that hasn't happened yet, right? It's not fear. Fear is, always directed, or fear is always the result of something you are currently dealing with. Case in point, somebody tells me there's a dog outside that is about to attack me. When I step out of the building, I have anxiety about that. Maybe there's a dog out there on State Street. If the dog runs into this room, I have fear. I see the dog. I have fear about it because it's clear and it's present. Anxiety is always about something that it hasn't happened yet. It's about something that could happen tomorrow, meaning this might happen. It's not happening, but it might happen. That's anxiety, right? I've talked about my favorite scene on that movie, A Few Good Men, when Jack Nicholson's character is being cross-examined. He said, "Did you think your men were in clear and present danger?" His response, "Is there any other kind?" Like if it's not clear and present, it's not danger. Yeah, what do you mean? I don't get. I'm not afraid of things that are not clear and present. If you're telling me something's going to happen to me tomorrow, I'm not. I'll be afraid of that tomorrow. That's not even danger yet. That's just somebody talking. Once it's present, now it's danger. The response is sometimes fear. Anxiety is like I'm concerned about things that haven't happened. So I'm not married. I'm concerned that I may never get married. I have money, but I'm concerned that I may end up broke. I'm in good health. I'm concerned that I may not be in good health. I have a loving relationship with my children. I'm pleased with my children. I'm concerned that one day they might be wayward. All of that is anxiety. Anxiety. The name of God to invoke when we feel anxiety is Ya Salam, O source of peace. Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam. Right? Wa ilayka na'udu ila dar salam. Oh Allah, you are peace. From you comes peace. Because in my anxiety, I am not at peace. See, I'm not at peace. You know, one of the beautiful, mashallah, this is subhanallah. I think this is such a reminder to those of us that experience adversity. You know, when Ibrahim, who many people consider to be the prototypical messenger of God, is Abraham. The Prophet Muhammad والسلام, is the culmination of prophethood, right? Ibrahim, his journey, his sacrifices, they in a way define what prophecy, what prophethood looks like. So when Ibrahim, whose father, Azara, he was the custodian of the idols within their community. His father was the custodian of the idols, right? So he was the keeper, the one that would dust them off and clean them and make sure that the altars were proper. And we know that Ibrahim, while his father and the rest of his people were at some festival, he took a pickaxe and cut up the idols. Bold move. Except for the largest idol of the pantheon, he took the axe and he put the axe on the largest idol. And when the people returned and saw these objects of their devotion, these votaries, destroyed, they began to ask, who did this? Who did this? And somebody said, there's a youth. You call him Ibrahim. They call him Ibrahim. He seems to have some aversion to idols. If anybody did it, it was probably him. So then they said, go get him. So they bring Ibrahim before that tribunal. And they said, do you know anything about what happened to these idols? Ibrahim said, why don't you ask the big one? Ask the largest idol. He should be able to tell you. They say, Ibrahim, you know these idols can't talk. You know these idols don't listen to us. You know these idols can't talk. They said, so Ibrahim, a youth, why would you worship something that doesn't talk to you? Why would you worship something that can't hear you? Why would you worship something that you know brings you no benefit, can do you no harm? And this enraged them. They said, kill him, kill him. So then they apprehended him. He was placed under arrest. And the whole community participated in building a huge bonfire. Right? They built this fire. And it's mentioned in some secondary sources that the fire was so large that birds that flew over the fire were scorched by its heat. A huge fire. It was so large that a person really couldn't get close to it. That's how large it was. They had the catapult, a manjaniq. Manjaniq in Arabic is a catapult. So even to get Ibrahim into the fire, they had to put him in a catapult and vault him into the fire. It wasn't like somebody could get close enough to like throw him in. It was they would be burned. Right? It was a huge fire. So they had to put him in a catapult, and they catapulted him in. They said that as the fire was burning, even as Ibrahim, and by the way, his father supported this. His father did not object to his son being killed. They said, kill him. His father said, kill him. Kill him. We have to kill him. We have to do it. We have to protect our gods. We have to kill him. When Ibrahim was thrown into the fire, they say at that moment, the angel Jibreel, alayhi salam, peace be upon him, came to Ibrahim and asked him, Alaka haja? Right? He's experiencing the angelic presence. And they say, do you need anything? Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be able to speak fast enough. I'm in a fire. You need anything? What do you think? Of course I need something. I'm being burned here. They're throwing me in the fire. I need help. Right? You need anything? Ibrahim reportedly said, Amma minka fala. Do I need anything from you? No. Amma min rabbi fa'ilmuhu an hali hasbi an su'ali. Do I need anything from my Lord? His knowledge of what I'm going through suffices. I don't need to ask anything. Allah knows what I'm going through. Allah knows what this is. At that moment, when he submits to God in that way, when he expresses his trust for God in that way, Allah says, we said to the fire, Kuni baradan salama ala Ibrahim. Allah says, be cool and peaceful for Abraham. So the fire did not burn him. That Kuni baradan salama ala Ibrahim. That the fire did not burn him. Later on, somebody was asking, reportedly someone asked Ibrahim about that moment. You know, the most miraculous thing to ever happen to him, right? You were thrown in a fire and it did not burn you. Can you tell us something about that? And Ibrahim reportedly said, the moments I spent in that fire were the most peaceful, calmest moments of my life. The proof in this, the lesson in this, is that somebody could look at someone. You could see them in a divorce, or you could see them in, a situation where they're unable to get married, so they're involuntarily celibate. Or you could see them in financial free fall. Or you could see them dealing with a tense relationship with a parent. Or you could see them in a tough situation at work. And you would think, and this must be a fire. Being in that situation, to me, it would be like being roasted in a fire if I was in that situation. And then you see them, and they might tell you, it was difficult. But the nearness that I experienced to Allah, the responsiveness that I experienced to my prayers, the favor of God that I knew in that time, wallahi, it was one of the sweetest and most peaceful times of my life. I heard a story about somebody like that, this one of the knowers of Allah, I think she or he had contracted like an illness, and it was debilitating and very painful. But they mentioned that the relationship they gained with God during that time made it one of the most spiritually gratifying periods of their entire life. They said that almost all of the signs that God mentions in the Quran, I was experiencing them. فَمَنْ يُعَمِّرْهُ نُنَكِّسْهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ. Whoever we allow to, grow very old, نُنَكِّسْهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ. We reverse him or her in their creation. Meaning after attaining a rank of full strength, now they can't do anything for themselves. After attaining a rank of full knowledge, now they don't know anything. After maybe memorizing lots of beneficial and useful material, now they can barely remember where the bathroom is in their own house. And in that, he's saying, this is a sign of God. Subhanallah. Right? Even though I'm experiencing what might appear a difficult situation, it still has opened my heart to the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the power of God. That is a person that even in fire is at peace, because they recognize that Allah is the source of peace. Allah is the source of peace. So, powerful name. Wanted to do about 30 minutes on that. Are there any questions about this or about anything else? Ramadan questions. Folks online that have questions, we are open, inshallah.
I have a question. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Sister Indiri.
This was really beneficial. I hope to get the recording because it's exactly what I needed. So jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you. I have a question.
Sister Indiri, whenever I speak to an audience and you in the audience, I feel like I'm a good speaker. Bismillah.
Alhamdulillah, it's facts though. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I was reading the Quran. I'm doing one particular thing, and I was reading the Quran, and it was talking about to be patient in difficult times. And I think in the context of what you're saying today, for me, I guess I'm curious in terms of finding the balance between when you have to be patient in times of endurance and when it's time to, using the context of today, fight even though you don't like fighting or something like that. Like when is it time, like if you're kind of dealing with I guess a difficult situation, how do you figure out the balance between being forbearant and patience, being patient and seeing how Allah wants to deal with the situation versus proactively making a change or changing the situation or the environment?
Bismillah. Very, very good question. And I think the answer to this question is found in recognizing that proactivity and patience are not mutually exclusive. I think this is a separation that we make in our minds, that if I'm working on something, I'm not being patient. And if I am being patient, I'm just sitting back and just letting it happen. No, you can work on something. Your patience is what leads to you not being frustrated that you have to work on it. See, whenever I think about that, it's like, let's say I'm working on something. That doesn't mean that I'm not patient. I'm patient with the fact that what I'm working on has not been accomplished yet. That where I'm supposed to be in this moment is working on it. So it's like, a person that is, trying to build a Fortune 500 company or just establish, a successful business or a successful practice. Their patience isn't not working, not marketing, no. Their patience is, I'm okay with the fact that I'm at step one and the task has not been completed yet. I realize that I'm only at step one in maybe a 20-stage process, but that's okay with me. That's why I'm patient. I actually have the patience to go through step one, step two, step three, step four, step five, step six. Doesn't mean that I'm not proactive, but I am not frustrated at the fact that I'm not already at step 20. See, that is where patience comes into my mind.
Let me give a little bit more of a different analogy, and
Okay.
that's helpful. But let's say it's two people, they're not married, they're two people who are in a relationship, in a courtship that's moving towards marriage, for example. This is just hypothetical, right?
Just hypothetical.
They're both they're both good people, but it seems like the relationship is not necessarily working out, or it doesn't seem like, and they're both putting the work in, but it's like, they could always decide, this doesn't, like, when do you cut off? Like, it's like, okay, maybe they're not compatible, or they're feeling like they're not compatible, or one person is feeling like they're not compatible anymore. Like, oh, they're two good believers, it lines up, they should do it, versus, this is not making me feel good. There are good things that come from it, but I'm just weighing that it's not good as much. When do you kind of, how do you cut off between, like, mashallah, this is a good thing, versus, I think that's a better example. But again,
Bismillah. Historians say that when a person is trying to do historiography, putting history together, if somebody says it's hypothetical and they give you all kinds of details, it's not hypothetical. No, but
it's not a relationship, but it's a good analogy towards one.
No, Bismillah. No, I think that the heart, and I think we have to grow in our capacity to listen to our hearts. But the ultimate sign of the acceptance of, say, istikhara is that you are at peace. See, like, the person that is, like, trying to feel this relationship out, they have not, I wouldn't tell them to get married until they feel peace. Now, you don't have to have a dream. You don't have to, some people, man, the standard of their istikhara is just, I don't marry somebody until the Prophet Muhammad brings them to me in a gift, in a silk cloth, places them in my hands and says, I think you should marry this woman. He said, that's when I'm gonna get married. Well, subhanAllah. But that's not necessary. But you do have to have contentment and acceptance of your decision in your heart, that you say, I'm going to get married, and you're okay with that. I'm going to take this job. You're okay with that. I'm going to buy this car. You're okay with that. I'm going to rent this apartment, buy this home. If you have that tuma'nina, you are at peace in your heart, then the istikhara has been accepted, and you should proceed in whatever gives you that peace. Now, if in that situation, either both or one of them, they just aren't at peace. I just don't, something about it won't let me take that leap of faith. Then you have to ask yourself, why not? What are you waiting for? And I was telling this to someone a couple weeks ago. I think Sister Benta, I was telling this to her. I think these prolonged courtships only lead to people becoming frustrated with each other. And I think if a courtship is longer than 6 months, I don't think the two people will end up getting married. That's my personal opinion. Because I think what happens, my theory, I'm sure there are people who courted for years and ended up getting married, but my theory is that a relationship has stress that naturally comes from getting to know another person, their opinions, their expectations, etc. But with that, it also has relief from stress in intimacy, in emotional connection, in laughter together, in when people engage in those prolonged courtships, they have all of the tension because they're still corresponding about this, none of the release. The release is still haram, but none of the release, all of the tension. They end up getting a very imbalanced picture of what it would be like to be with this person. So you know what it's like to kind of, have this conversation about, financial philosophies. What's your financial philosophy? What's your financial philosophy? And that's very tense and it leads to, but you don't know what it's like to come home and say, okay, the financial philosophy conversation was kind of stressful. You want to watch a movie? Because you can't do that. You see, you're not able to do that. So I feel like the only thing you can do is grow frustrated with each other. That's all you can do. And to my mind, it's like you get all of the stress, all of the difficulty, none of the enjoyment, none of the pleasure, none of the release. I just think it's a recipe for disaster to me.
Thank you.
No, alhamdulillah. Yeah. Other questions? I did.
What you do on
Ramadan, we gonna still meet. I'm gonna still be here, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Yes.
Wanted to probe your thoughts on the Dawah aspect. Let me just get excited questions and thoughts.
Bismillah.
So, Muslims in the US are obviously in a situation with this one minority. Right? They have to deal with a syncretic culture. Obviously. In ways that can be degenerative, they have to deal with the fact that, at least in the US, there's a militaristic presence that impacts Muslim countries across the world. They also deal with the fact that militaristic presence is much stronger than Muslims want to get generated. So, and you sort of turn these things together, and also the fact that there are many factions within America. So we're not. When you try to sort of contradict what sort of formulation of that?
Formulation of the, you said formulation of the, what's the last word you said?
Dawah, or like how would you?
Dawah.
Can you repeat it for the online audience?
Asking about da'wah and just looking at some of the contextual challenges to da'wah. It's interesting. I'm actually conflicted myself. Would I or wouldn't I refer to Islam as a missionary religion? Some sociologists of religion say that only Islam and Christianity are missionary religions. That seems to be the goal, meaning that Muslims and Christians actively seek converts, right? They actively, Jews do not, for the most part, propagate Judaism. It's not like they're trying to go around and bring other, Hindus are not trying to make other people Hindu. Buddhists are not trying to make other people Buddhists. It's really Muslims and Christians that are seen as missionary faiths, that we are actively calling other people to embrace the faith. The reason I have some issue with that is that Muslims, yes, you do see some missionary initiative in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. So like him sending the stamped, sealed letters to world leaders. The Prophet ﷺ writing to An-Najashi in East Africa, who was a king of Axum, right, of Habasha. Him writing to Heraclius, the Great in Rome. Him writing to Kisra, the king of Persia. This is an indication that the Prophet ﷺ understood his position to be more than a regional religious reformer to Arabs. If the Prophet ﷺ had only aspired to be a regional religious reformer of Arabs, he would not be writing the Byzantines. He would not be sending correspondence to the Persians. He would not be sending correspondence to African kingdoms. It's very clear that he understood his own position to be the last and final messenger of God to all of humanity. You also have a statement of the messenger of God. بَلِّغْ عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Tell people about me. So there is some missionary impulse in Islam, undoubtedly. But you don't historically see the same coordinated missionary activity that you see among Christians. Now, Christianity is an evangelical faith that from the very as early as Saul of Tarsus, who becomes the self-appointed 13th apostle of Christ, Paul, changes his name from Saul to Paul. The whole impulse of Christianity is missionary activity. Even all of the epistles and the whole thing is about bringing people into this relationship with Christ. So missionary activity is like a pillar of Christianity, to Christianize the world. And you see that their efforts have been very strategic, very systematic, very coordinated. The Catholic Church especially, Catholic missions all over the world, right? Muslims have never really done that. Their da'wah was always informal and through interpersonal relationships. You look at most of the people who led the conversion to Islam in most of the majority Muslim world, these were business people, merchants, traders, people that went to do business with folks, people that lived among folks. You know, anyone who says Islam was spread by the sword that's not accurate. Islamic rule was spread by the sword. Meaning Muslims, and even to say that, you know, I think there's a historical misnomer there. See, when we think about territories, we think in the context of the nation state, that there's a state and there's a motto, and flag, and borders, and a person coming into a territory knows they've crossed the border, and you have a militia at the Mexican border. No. In the old days, you had loose political configurations. And for people who weren't at the center of government, they didn't care who was. The only thing of changing of power meant somebody different is taking my taxes. It wasn't, you know, so you could very well have people in Egypt being ruled by the Romans. The Muslims come through, kick the Romans out. They assume the rule to the farmer in southern Egypt. Muslims, Romans, I don't know, man. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't really make a difference to me. So even saying Islamic rule was spread by the sword, Muslims from the time of Sayyidina Umar, maybe 500 years after that, led an expansionist empire, meaning Islam spreading to all corners of the world, from Arabia to all corners of the world. But they would only unseat, through fighting, the governments of those places. The people wouldn't just become Muslim. The people didn't just embrace Islam because the new government was Muslim. The people embraced Islam slowly, over years. You know, it shocked me to learn, right? And these are non-Muslim historians writing. When some of the most influential books in our tradition were written, Muslims were actually a minority in the places those books were written. So when Abu Hanifa was in Baghdad, Assalamu alaikum, they say when Abu Hanifa, the great scholar, was in Baghdad, Muslims were only 12% of the population. Most of Baghdad was non-Muslim at that time. So the way that they gave dawah was to engage the intellectual and cultural currents of the time. That's how they gave dawah. Their dawah was a much more organic dawah, right? Which is what explains kind of the growth of the Islamic intellectual tradition. What they were actually doing was answering questions that people had. People had issues they needed resolving. Muslim scholars would say, we have a way in our religion to resolve this issue, this business issue, this personal issue. We can help you with this. This intellectual issue. That's how much of Islamic theology was developed. Why do you think a lot of the questions that form the basis of Islamic theology, you don't see that from the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba? And even, I'm not a person that's against Ash'aris or Maturidis, but we have to be honest, the way that they talk about God, that's not from the Prophet ﷺ. That's not the way that the Sahaba, saying, if you went up to Sayyidina Abu Bakr and asked him, tell me about the wajib, the mumkin, and the muhad, what is necessarily existent, what is possibly existent, and what is impossible to exist. Saying Abu Bakr will have no idea what you were talking about. What? This shit wasn't the way they thought. Why did that become a part of the Islamic tradition? Because that's the way the people around them, being exposed to the scholastic traditions of Christianity and, the church and the Persian schools of philosophy, that was the way they talked about God. So Muslims had to find a way of explaining the realities of our religion in a language that they understood, but that was true to our religion. And that is historically how da'wah was given. That's how you give da'wah to وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِ. We have not sent a messenger except with the language of the people. Language is not limited to just, elocution and words. Language is also cultural currents, understanding context, time, place, etc. So the first way I would answer your question is that da'wah, a modality of da'wah is how can you, while being true to the teachings of your religion, make the teachings of your religion relevant to people. Why should this matter to them? And it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult because sometimes you're like, wait, I want to make this relevant to them, but I also want to preserve the spirit. So even if I thought, what would make Juma awesome? If we brought in a band to play between the two khutbah. People would love Juma. I know some brothers that get it. We can't do that. That's the Prophet ﷺ already told us how to pray Juma. You see, we can't do that. And this is a place where, I tell people all the time, bid'ah. If you look at bid'ah, some Muslims, they reject bid'ah so much, they don't see the lessons to be learned from bid'ah. Bid'ah being innovation in the religion. Whenever somebody innovates in the religion, it's only a sign of their shallowness in the religion. Because instead of being able to dig into the religion very deeply, to authentically produce something that people will be able to attach to, they just invent something. You see, but the goal is always to highlight the relevance of religion. Why you think they made it up? You only make up what you think is going to appeal to somebody. If I'm trying to get you into this religion, and I don't know enough about this religion to get you into this religion authentically, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to make something up. Say, man, look, now, when you make something up, if you're clever, you got you. That's what the Nation of Islam is. I make something up. He said, I make this up. Because if I make it up, then I have tailor-made this for you, your problems, your struggle, your issue, your insecurity. I made it just for you. So when you're sitting there thinking, man, this is really hitting home. Of course it's hitting home, it's a bid'ah. No, but so no, I'm serious. Sometimes people, man, everybody think that joint really hitting home. It's the bid'ah. Why you think it was hitting home? They made it up for you. When you are trying to stick to the authentic teachings of a faith, you have to be able to dig very deeply. And this is why knowledge is important. Because I want to be as relevant as the Muqtadi, the person that's inventing lies to attract the people. I want to be as relevant as him, but I want to tell the truth. I want to tell the truth and be relevant. That is dawah. I want to tell the truth and be relevant. Not make up something to be relevant. Not make up something for you to feel me. I want to tell the truth and have you feel me. And it's a challenge, man. That is, you talk about giving dawah. It's a challenge. In terms of like the militaristic presence of America around the world, man, I've come to terms with that as it's something we have to deal with. It's something we have to deal with that I just finished paying my taxes. And I know some of that money will be used to fund armaments that will harm my brothers and sisters. This is a reality. We have to live with that. And calling to Islam while recognizing that, I don't think it invalidates our call to Islam. But I do think that we show ourselves to have some integrity when we acknowledge that in many ways, as I talk to you, standing on my high pedestal, I'm also complicit in some of this evil. I'm also, I'm not absolved. I participate. The depletion of the ozone layer, and I participate, right? In a lot of the culture that we see overrunning this planet, I participate. The only thing that I'm trying to do through Islam is just even my scale by submitting to my Lord and trying to do in my limited capacity what my Lord requires of me. In no way am I saying I'm angelic, I'm perfect, I'm not, or that my country of origin is perfect. No, this is a reality. And this is a reality whether you live in America or somewhere in the Muslim world. It's still a reality. Sometimes I think, yes, we are a taxed citizenry, but that whole realm up there of world politics and economics, it's got its own, it's its own space. I mean, I'm not washing my hands, but when I think about, I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes it's advisable to acknowledge a separation between people in power and just common folks. It's just common folks. Some people just go to the store and pay their sales tax. Right? They live. They don't want to be jailed. They pay their income tax. Money's taken straight out of their check. They pay their income tax. To make them culpable for, I don't know. I mean, we ask for God's mercy. You do realize that was the basis of the fatwa of Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden had no Islamic legal training. Osama bin Laden actually worked in demolition. This is not it. The irony. The irony. Osama bin Laden's training was in demolition. Some people stick to what they know. You know what I'm saying? But his fatwa was that acts of aggression against all American citizens are permissible because all of them pay the money that funds the military. So all of them can, in a way, be considered combatants. That the way in the classical fiqh tradition, you separated combatants and non-combatants. You know, Muslims always had a very sophisticated way of waging war. They separated combatants and non. When Muslims are going and wage war, they would only fight combatants. Anybody who came out of their house showing their hands, I don't want any trouble. They're looking for the opposing army. Then I look, if somebody comes out and says, look, I ain't got nothing to do with none of this. I'm just an old man and just pick apples, man. What you killing me for? Because I live here? Don't kill me. I don't care. Muslims never kill non-combatants. The Muslims didn't even fight against staff. To show you how far we've come in terms of warfare. Even people who were serving water to the other army, giving them food, the women that were nursing their wounds, the Prophet said avoid them. The Muslims didn't even kill the staff of just the combatants, just the soldiers. Not even the support staff. Right? Osama bin Laden broke all of that legal precedent said, because all of them are taxpayers, any of them can be killed. All of it's valid. Shut up. Right? And I thought, what an ignorant fatwa. What a destructive fatwa. What an ignorant fatwa. Right? So yes, we have to find a way of coming to terms with the militarism of the United States. And the fact that we are US citizens and Muslims. So I really don't have a quick answer to that. But I see the dilemma. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim al-Asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum. What time is Maghrib? 7:03 now?
Walaikum salam. I think it just came in.
Alaikum salam.
Hey, Yesha, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Lamia.
Did Indeed? Oh, yeah, she hung
Yeah,
up.
she left. Yeah. Well,
All
I'm
right.
already late for Maghrib, so here I go. Bismillah.
Wait, you what? Well, sir.